This is a headline, and it looks like a cheap piece of foam because that's exactly what it is. But on the other side of that foam is a very thin, very light fabric. This foam gets glued to, depending on the car, it's either fiberglass or plastic, and it's a mold that gets connected to the interior of the roof of the car. And the other side of this, like I said, is a cheap piece of fabric. 9 times out of 10, this is what people are dealing with, this fabric blowing in the wind while the foam is staying to the roof. And then people go out and buy this expensive spray glue, and they try to spray the fabric back onto the foam, and it looks terrible and it doesn't work, and that's because that glue is made to glue the foam to the fiberglass mold. So if this is your problem, which is most likely why you're watching this video, how do you fix it the right way? I'm about to show you. Let's do it. I'm working on a Chrysler product here, and it's a 2006 Town & Country minivan, and that's a lot of headliner, and as you can see, it's sagging everywhere. I'm not sure there's a square inch of this headliner that's still glued up and in place. Here's a close-up look, and as you can see, there's air all up under there, and the owner took these tack-like things and sort of used them to keep the headliner from coming completely down. And on the front, up by the top of the windshield, you can see they put duct tape up there, and of course that didn't work. And so it just kept getting worse, and now it's at the breaking point, so they come to me and say, "Johnny, help me," and I'm here to help them. So the removal of the old one is going to be all in fast forward until I hit a snag or a problem issue, and then I'll slow it down and explain what the problem is in case you run into this too. And we're going to start by removing the visors. These are Torx, it's just 2 small bolts, and there's a wire that goes through and up. The connector is tucked up under the headliner, so you just have to pull the wires down. But we run into a problem with this on the right side, and I'll show you what the issue is. The connector can't be found. I'm pulling on the wire. And what happened when they made this car at the factory, when they made the headliner, the machine accidentally glued the connector to the top of the headliner. You're supposed to be able to pull that wire down, find the connector, and just disconnect it. But with this one, we have to pull the headliner down, and we can see the problem is it's glued. So we're going to break that glue loose and just pull it apart and drop it down, and now we can see the connector, and as you can see, it's corroded with glue. So just disconnect that wire now, and we're going to have to take some of that glue off. So yeah, it's just a factory flaw, and as you get down and dirty into cars, you start seeing little factory flaws like that. And basically all we're doing here is just removing anything that's attached to that headliner. There's a couple interior lights. There's a couple buttons that push up and keep that headliner, the main part of the headliner, the fiberglass part, intact, and everything attached. And then there's a couple hangers, for coat hanger stuff. And there's a center storage compartment up by the front, by the driver's seat right there. You see me pulling it down. And it's got 2 wires connected to it once you get it down, which is just 2 clips on the side. Here's an issue. All those lights at the top of the headliner, they have to run off something. So the wiring harness going up to the top of the headliner is all coming down through this column here. And it looks forever for the connection to disconnect these wires, and it's all the way down by the floorboard. It's like, what are you doing to me, Chrysler? This is what the top of your headliner looks like. It's all fiberglass, and that's the part that nobody sees because it's all the way up by the roof. The other side is the bottom, and that's the side where all the fabric and stuff glues to. The ultimate would be to get the bottom looking like this before we glue the fabric onto it. And that foam that you see underneath the fabric, that'll come off real easy. Just get yourself a stiff brush and go to town just brushing it off. You're not going to be able to get every single tiny piece off. So we're going to have to vacuum this up. It'll break up into like thousands of real tiny pieces. And if you take a good look at this, you'll see all the little pieces that I was not able to get up with a brush. So we'll just take a shop vac and go to town on this until everything comes up. You can see there they put extra glue around every opening, and all that glue still has to come up. And this is how we're going to reinstall it. We're going to put extra glue around every opening because this is what has the most potential to get up air up under that headliner. And that will eventually destroy it. You should order more headliner than you need. Most of them are sold at 60 inches wide, but then there's different lengths. This is 120 inches long because we're dealing with a van. So I'll be cutting a lot of excess off. And just remember, when you cut this stuff, you can always cut more of it, but you can't put it back on once it's cut. So just roll it out and make sure you have enough of it, and then bend it back at about the halfway point, somewhere. It doesn't have to be exactly. We're just going to be gluing it down in small sections between 1 foot and 14 inches wide, and just in the middle, in the flattest part of the headliner, which is right in the middle. I'll show you exactly what it. And notice I'm not going up on the sides of the headliner. I'm just focusing on the middle. Most of the contours in the headliner are on the sides, so we're going to take our time and make sure the middle is glued down before I do the sides. So I'm putting, that's a lot of glue right there, and put the glue on both the headliner and on the fiberglass mold. And then just massage this into place and then back off on the headliner, and then focus on another 14 inches wide. And again, just the center of the mold. And we do that all the way to the end, and make sure those ends have a lot of glue on them, especially the front. This is where these break. So I want to put a lot of focus on the front, which you see me working on right now. And every time you get a section laid in, go ahead and just keep massaging it. Make sure everything's flat. Make sure you have no air under there, no creases. And if you take your time, you can do that perfect. Now I'm not cutting it all the way to the end there. I'm leaving about 5 inches overhang on that end. And then just repeat the whole thing on the other side, 14 inches at a time. Or 16 inches or 12 inches, whatever you want to do. So yeah, I spent a lot of time flattening this down with my hand. On the sides, you'll see me use a roller, a paint roller. Right now, I'm just taking a piece of masking tape and picking up just tiny specks of, just dust and glue from the old headline. I don't know how they got on there, but they did. And now we're going to do the sides. Remember, around those openings right there, put extra glue and put extra glue on the ends too. You're going to make a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. And be careful not to get glue on the actual front of the headline. So being there's overhang, you don't have to go all the way to the end. Stop about an inch forward. I think I have about 3 inches on the sides. You can cut this headliner right at the edge. And this is what the factory does, and they don't bother tucking it over or gluing the underside of it. But they're doing it the fastest, easiest way possible. And you can do that and no one will ever know you did it until it falls apart 10 or 15 years down the road. And it's the same way with these holes. You can cut this along the edge and not even worry about gluing the back side. And no one is ever going to know because this is going to cover it. So you're not going to get any glory here by doing it the hard way and the custom way. But you're going to get more satisfaction out of it because you know it's never going to come down. It's going to last forever. And here's another one. And the point is, you really don't have to go through all this trouble of doing it great. And the downside of doing it right and why people don't do it right is because it takes a long time. The other big issue is these plastic pieces and the light and all. It's going to be a tight fit. You're going to have to struggle with it to get them to fit right. But if you ask me, I mean, everything's tighter, and nothing's going to rattle around, and it's going to be soundproof, and everything's going to be awesome. And you're going to know it's awesome. So, I mean, it's your choice. You can go the extra mile, or you can just get it done as fast as you can. When you cut these slots here, don't cut them to all the way to the edge of the board. You want to leave at least like a ½ inch to wrap around tight. Don't stretch the headliner, but you want it tight around that edge. And once you have everything glued down, you're going to put a heavy coat of glue all the way around the edge of that headliner. I brought it out in the sun to let the heat bake that glue onto the board. And I'm going to double check everything and leave it sit in the sun for a few hours, and then start putting the trim pieces back on.